The first story holds a trigger warning. It is an intense story. It involves sexual trauma of me as an infant at 3 months old. It will also talk about murder and yeah, so it's an intense start. Um, so when I was an infant, my we're just gonna jump right into it. My uncle was a Marine. He was loved by my grandfather, and my grandfather had a really rough go of things when his father had moved in with him and he started drinking. And when he drank, he was not a good person, from what I had heard. He had raped his daughter and his younger son and their friends. And I didn't hear about this story until much later on in life. And my mom certainly didn't have any knowledge of the pedophilia that was happening, the rapism, the awfulness. Um, I know that's a lot to start this story out with, but I want to make it very clear that um, my mom did not really understand the person that she was leaving me with an infant, as an infant. That's the problem with burying stories and not being transparent with people. My uncle was murdered 3 months before I was born. And so my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, by blood, not to be mistaken by my step grandfather, who was my hero. Let's be very clear about these two very different family situations. My paternal blood grandfather was completely distraught when his son was found murdered, understandably so. And he spiraled and drank, and just things got worse and worse and worse. Um, and one day, my mom was having a rough time as a new mom, and she really wanted to she needed time. She just needed time away. And I forgive my mother for what happened here because she didn't have any idea. She was just a young mom, 27, 28. And she dropped me off at my grandfather's, and she left. And when she came back, um, she picked me up and I was crying, and she took me home, and to her horror, discovered that um, I had been sexually assaulted. My child, like, yeah, you can just imagine things red and swollen and hurting. And I think she just put it away in her head, hoping that I wouldn't remember, which is understandable. I can't imagine how horrific that must have been for her as a mom. And yeah, it wasn't until um, well, let's see, like jumping around in the story. 3 months after that happened, when my paternal grandfather sexually assaulted me at 3 months old, he drank himself to death, which is also understandable. I imagine after that, he just couldn't quite live with himself. I feel really bad for my dad because he both found his brother murdered and 6 months later found his dad dead in his chair with 3/5 of vodka. I feel bad for my dad. It wasn't until I was 19 years old that it came to light that that had happened. We'll go a little deeper later in my rolling history of life as to why that came to be, keep you in suspense. Um, but someone said that they thought that I exhibited signs of somebody who had been sexually assaulted or something. And I was like, that's weird. Like, I couldn't remember anything. And I remember going to my mom and asking her, like, had something happened when I was a kid that I just don't remember? And she broke down crying. And she told me what I found out later, because I had had x-rays from different chiropractors I'd gone to over the years. I had a hypoplastic disc at L5S1. which for those of you who don't know what that is, it basically is like a fusion in an area, and people just assumed that it was from like a birth defect. It's not. It's not from that. It's from what happened to me from my grandfather. My grandfather blew out my back when I was 3 months old, and so that rippled out into what happened to the rest of my life, energetically, pain with sex that I would have later, so many different things. And then how that moment when I was 3 months old led to that compromise in my lumbar spine and ending up having two low back surgeries um, and so much more, how it's rippled. In the last year, with the work that I've done on myself, I have forgiven my grandfather for what he did. Not as a justification for his actions, because there is nothing that justifies sexual assault, let alone to an infant. Um, you might wonder, how did I know that that had happened? I ran through a process when I was in my early 20s where I actually drew the inside of his house. And I took it to my father and asked him if it looked familiar. I was like, does this place look familiar? And he told me it was my grandfather's kitchen, which I had never been in again after the incident, which is crazy what we hold inside of us. But I came to a place within myself in regards to my paternal grandfather to forgive him, to think about what horrors that he must have experienced within his own life that brought him to a space that he felt like that was his only option for relief. To have such deep compassion for a soul, to forgive him, to not hold on to it. That must have been one hell of a life, to come to a space where raping your own children and your grandchild was what you felt like was okay. It's a lot to share publicly, something so deep and so dark in our family line. The judgment that I feel like could come towards me for different reasons. But there are people out there that need to be able to share their stories, to not feel alone in the things that they've experienced, to maybe be able to release and to forgive without condoning the actions that took place, that they no longer have to be owned by them, to give their power back to them. It's a lot. In Charlottesville, Virginia, there is a nonprofit called SARA. It stands for the Sexual Assault Resource Agency. They have really amazing programs there and have people that will talk to you. They offer mental health counseling for people no matter how long it's been since you've been assaulted, for as long as you need it, is my understanding. And they make that really functional. So, regardless of your gender identification or what you may have experienced on any timeline in life, if you are in this area and you need support, please reach out to Sarah, the nonprofit. They are run by truly wonderful human beings. And I highly recommend that you take the time to do the work that you need to work through this. Like, you deserve to be able to get on the other side if you've ever experienced any kind of sexual trauma. There are more stories I will be sharing about it, but this is the deepest one in regards to things that people don't want to talk about. I will not be sharing all of my life stories here, but um, I will share them, a good many of them, because I don't want to be owned by shame or fear of judgment. And I want to shed a light on the conversations that people should have with kindness and love and compassion and patience and grace. So here's the first brave step. I'll see you tomorrow.